Live from parts unknown, you're listening to Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast, the only wrestling podcast on the planet, we think. Sit back, relax, prepare for positivity to run through your veins as Simon Miller gives you your weekly dose of powerful pro wrestling audio. It is Miller Time.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Simon Miller, as the title suggests, and the reason it's a very special edition is because a man that joined me a few months ago to an episode that was received very well and pleased me greatly. It is the one and only Jim Sterling, who joins me again to talk about pro wrestling. Jim, how are you doing?
Like, they're going to last for a month or two, but I'm really into the Bludgeon brothers for as long as it lasts.
Dude.
Hello, Simon. Hello.
I tell you, man, I don't know what it was. So, during the vignettes and during the build-up, I was like, okay, it's just cool to see Harper and Rowan back.
It made me laugh a lot, like hammer-wielding, socially awkward druids. I was sold on that alone. And I'm a big fan of masks anyway, in any circumstance. Sheep gas mask, I was all about.
Absolutely. And you saw them debut on SmackDown, I take it?
I did, yes.
I loved it. I loved the presentation. They had to run over the hype bros, but that's no big surprise. But I guess you could argue that's a bit of a shame, but I don't care. Because I genuinely got such a kick out of the entrance, the presentation, the finishing move. I was like, this is great. I love this.
Yeah. I like Harper anyway because he looks like my friend Ronnie. I mean, like exactly like my friend Ronnie.
Excellent.
Which always delights me. But from what I've seen of him in the past, I've always liked his, he does the wild-eyed stare thing so well. He has this presence.
Oh, yeah.
And seeing him and Rowan together, I agree with the common consensus that there was a re-energized vibe to them. And yeah, I was just really pleased with it. And I even liked when they took all the druid clothes off. A lot of people were like, well, what's with that ring gear? Sort of reminded me of, they were a little Kane-ish in their attire.
Yeah, they were. Absolutely.
And I was fine with that. It was this sort of rough black and red slash looking thing. It worked for me.
I totally agree. And I think the reason I loved it so much is because it felt like a throwback to sort of late 80s, early 90s stuff. And it's been so long since we've had like a proper gimmick.
Yeah.
I got a real kick out of it because of course it's silly. I mean, why did they film these vignettes in the woods? Like, that's never explained. Why are they out there in the woods? Because they just are. That's where they live. And I just feel like
that's what happens.
Yeah, and it's such a nice, because wrestling's cyclical, as we all know, and I'm done with all the realism stuff now. I don't want that. I want nonsense and stupidity again.
We talked a little bit about this last time, like when my initial view was that WWE especially was just a lot of just people.
Yeah.
It's part of why I liked, why I like a lot of the women's division is there seems to be a little bit more defining characteristics between the women wrestlers that they have at the moment. But yeah, seeing the Bludgeon brothers come in, like they've got big hammers. Why? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
You're right, it doesn't though. And that's why I love it. None of it is explained. I mean, maybe WWE will do that over the next few weeks, but I hope they don't. Just accept it for what it is. We're in wrestling.
Yeah.
We're kooky characters. Deal with it. Because I think all that matters is when they're in the ring, they're kick ass. And they're two massive blokes. So it's not like you're not going to get that impression regardless. And I think when you have that balance, you can kind of do whatever you want with the character.
It's seen The Undertaker in good stead for a long time. So long as you protect the character, it can be as outlandish as possible. Yeah. I mean, to outsiders, The Undertaker is ludicrous. To not take any respect away from the man. To an outsider, that's a silly caricature, a comic book thing, a cartoon. But over, decades of build and protection and keeping that presence going, the fans buy into it. And let's not forget that we look back on it badly now, but fans did buy into that moment when he rode down in a bike to Limp Bizkit.
Oh man, they went crazy, yeah.
Yeah, he was still sort of committed to it and protected with it, like supported with it. It's a two-way street. It's the performers buying into it, and of course the creative department supporting it. So long as the BBs get that, I'm guessing their eventual program with the Fashion Police, then yeah, I'm all aboard.
Me too. I think it even ties in, and this is my awful attempt at a segue, but it still counts. It's almost like what they did, with Kurt Angle back in the early 2000s, because Kurt Angle, obviously, backstage on the microphone was a goof, and yet when he was in the ring, he was such a machine. You were like, well, you can be as funny and as silly as you want, Kurt, because I know, when it gets serious, for lack of a better term, you're going to be absolutely amazing. So you can get away with being funny and silly and goofy and wearing little mini cowboy hats on your head. Because I know you can kick ass, so I know you can be like that outside of the ring. Because really, all that matters in wrestling is what you do inside the ring, and that's where your point about the booking committee treating people right. I mean, and obviously, Kurt Angle is back now, and seems to, now he's had a couple of matches, seems to be getting somewhat of a mixed reaction, just because a lot of people are like, oh man, Kurt Angle is old and broken. maybe we shouldn't have wished him back. I mean, what have you thought about it from, him coming, I know we chatted about it a bit before, but him coming back as GM, and now he's had a couple of matches. I mean, a lot of people have turned. Not in a negative way, more in a concerned way.
Yeah, I share a lot of that. I mean, it doesn't help that sometimes whenever it cuts to him, same with Daniel Bryan, I guess they just need them in media res, so it always cuts to them checking their phone.
Yes,
but with Kurt Angle, I believe it. I believe that he spends the whole of Raw on his phone, like not bothered. I mean, what did he call Jinder Mahal? Like Jinder Mahal?
Oh, that was the best. I love that.
Never watched SmackDown in his life. He's got a little bit of that sort of, doesn't seem all that invested as GM. And when he's in the ring, I mean, when I saw him at TLC, I had that immediate, oh dear, this is, he looks tender the whole time. This is a bit of a worry. At Survivor Series, which, again, Wise putting him in, mixed competition, he seemed better. I felt like his performance there was quicker and less fragile looking than at TLC. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, or if he just limbered up since TLC. Better, but you obviously, it's tough to see some of the classic stuff.
I think that's the problem,
the
right?
Classic Kurt Angle stuff and compare it to now. Obviously, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
Wrestling is one of the better reminders of all of our own frail mortality, because you can see quick, strong, young guys over the course of their career become, the opposite of quick, young, strong guys, and it sucks. But it's not like wrestlers are any different to human beings. It's coming to us all, and you kind of have to face that when you see some of this stuff. But I don't want to be mean or disrespectful to him. Like Kurt Angle, when he was having his big run when I became a big hardcore wrestling fan. He had that hot year, and I was mesmerized by the guy. I just felt absolutely in love. It was, we used to say among my friends, it was, hooray, Kurt Angle's music has hit. Fucking hooray, he's holding a microphone as well. It was like, to see Kurt Angle and hear Kurt Angle and just everything about him was just magic. So, for all that love and respect I have for him, I don't wish to pour any scorn or derision on the guy, but it is that sort of concern tinged with, it's a big, massive comeback is clearly not happening. I don't think there's a big second wind, title run kind of thing. I think if he were to get a title run, it would be, I don't think history would look back too fondly on it. But in the way they've been using him in matches right now, as sort of a marquee attraction in a sort of larger match, I think that's really, judging from what we've seen, the way to stay.
I agree, and I do think he suffers from how good he was 15 years ago. And also how good he was during his TNA run. Obviously, not a lot of people know about that because nobody watched TNA. But, you could even argue that sort of his high points in TNA in terms of match quality were above what he did in WWE. I mean, that's horses for courses because they were amazing all around. But I think you've hit the nail on the head as well. When it comes to pro wrestlers, wrestling fans especially do kind of put them on a pedestal and they do make them superheroes. So when they come back and they're not to the same level that you think they're going to be, simply because nostalgia is a powerful tool and you let yourself get carried away in the world of make-believe as it is. And in the world of make-believe, you think anything is possible. And then exactly when you realise, oh, no, wait, not only are they a human, but they're a human that's put their body through incredible strain over the last 20 or so years, of course there's only so much they're going to do. And I think it's something that all wrestlers have to struggle with, because in that Survivor Series main event too, it was the first time when I looked at Triple H and I thought, and I do like Triple H. I'm not sure how I felt about the whole ending focusing around him, but I do like him, and he does have that superstar appeal. But it was the first time I was like, you're getting old too. It's like you could see his shortcomings, and that to me was a huge maybe the reason it freaked me out so much is because it was a look into my own mortality.
Again, I think that's what it is. Like I sometimes look at it from a selfish standpoint. Like you see the physical effects of age in wrestling more than anything else, because in an unscripted competitive sport, once you hit a point where you can't realistically compete, you're out, you retire, you're done. In professional wrestling, in WWE especially, you get guys that just they don't want to quit, and because it's scripted, they don't need to quit as early, and so so we get a situation with Kurt Angle, who's, poor guy broke his neck like half a dozen times at least, still able to compete because of how the competitors look out for each other. So there is that safety element that you don't get in a competitive sport where your opponent isn't looking out for your health and safety so much. But it does give you this sort of a more drawn out sort of... too many careers go out on a whimper instead of a bang, because they'll have their big retirement match, their glory swan song, but they always want to come back for just one more, which is admirable and often can be wonderful, but sometimes there's something to be said for the Steve Austin approach of, I had my time, now I'm going to cut very strange podcasts.
They have got weird recently. I used to really enjoy that podcast. Now he just does crazy stuff on it all the time.
Yeah, my main approach to that is just listen to the highlights on YouTube about his various clearly exaggerated stories about getting things stuck up his ass and farting in gyms and things.
He's a hilarious guy, but he's absolutely bonkers these days. But I think that actually makes him more entertaining. But you're right, I just think Austin and Shawn Michaels, that's the only two I can think of people that probably called it a day before, from a fan's point of view, you didn't really think they'd come to that natural point. Other than that, I mean, even someone like The Undertaker, right? I mean, we don't know if he's properly retired or not, but I think, during WrestleMania 32, it was a bit like, yeah, Taker, you probably need to retire. You probably need to retire and get some rest now and fix that hip.
There's only so much the character can be protected when physically you see the immortal phenom, the dead man, significantly slower and older, and it's not a knock on age. It's just like, do it till you can't, but at some point the mystique will go, and you risk your final years, your swan song being some terrible gimmicky rubbish, doddering, taking some weak chair shots because you can't take anything else,
Yeah, smoke and mirrors. Smoke and mirrors always comes into it. And because I think as well, that's where we're building to with Kurt Angle and Triple H. I mean, I guess they're going to have a match at Royal Rumble or WrestleMania, sorry. And I would presume when that happens, it is. I mean, remember? I can't remember when you got back into it. Did you see Sting versus Triple H from Mania 31? Was it? I think
I did go back and see it. I've gone back and been doing my best to, in between all the thousands of other things I do, and trying to keep up with the information overload that is wrestling anyway.
Exactly.
And of course, independent wrestling as well, which we'll talk about at some point.
We definitely will.
Which I've been getting into. Because I know some of the feedback from the last one was, well, he's not really a wrestling fan, is he? He watches WWE. And I'm like, it's a fair point. That I wouldn't claim to ever be an expert on the business anyway. I know entertainment. I don't know the other parts of that are attached to WWE. But I've been sort of getting into looking at the indie stuff and everything as well. But I've gone back, had a look at some of the stuff. I did see Sting Triple H and it's this sort of initial. It's like a balloon being inflated and deflated very quickly when you hear the familiar music come out. When you hear now and Sting and Triple H and New Age Outlaws, DX, all this stuff. It's this initial oh, like it's hard to see. I guess because when I first started watching, you'd see guys like Ricky Steamboat come in to be like the joke cameo character in WrestleMania. We need a moment. Let's get, who have we got? Ricky Steamboat. Let's get IRS. Let's get him all dressed up again. Rotunda, get your tie on. All of that. Like,
get your briefcase.
But, yeah, get the briefcase, say something about taxes, you know what to do. And you'd have this sort of parade of nostalgic characters. And it's hard now seeing the guys I saw in their prime as the nostalgic characters. As I'm going to show up backstage at WrestleMania. And I remember when Farouk was more than show up once a year and shout, damn.
I always think that because to so many people, that's all he is. He's just some random dude that says, damn. That's it. Nothing else.
He's the damn guy. He's not, part of the nation. He's not part of the APA. He's just damn guy. Which is even weirder because he just started doing that as I was sort of drifting away from it. And now I go back and see that now he's become a sort of Pete Rose affair where he's trotted out every time to do his cartoon bit. The I didn't do it guy of WrestleMania, which is, the people watching it at the age I was watching it will look at them the way I would see, an IRS character. Sort of, I vaguely remember him from my childhood, but now I see him as, he's dancing in the background of something. And that's hard to say. And reminds me that I'm gonna die.
It's
probably
so
quicker
true,
than The Undertaker, to be fair.
But it's so true. I honestly think that's why we all react to it like this, because it is just one big signpost that says, don't forget, you're going to die. You're like, shit, that's true. What do we do? And then you panic. And then maybe you're like me and you think, you know what? I know how to counter that. I'll become a professional wrestler. That's how I'll counter this life. I'll live all my childhood dreams.
And then I won't want to stop.
Exactly.
And I'll be doing it when I'm 70 and I'll be Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler.
Exactly. And I'll die in the ring. And then I'll be like, I'm just one big parody of myself now, but never mind. So what did you think of Survivor Series as a whole? Because, it did set up a lot for WrestleMania, or at least set up, what you'd assume is going to be storylines for the next few months. I actually thought it was, I enjoyed the show, but I completely understand the criticism that it had, that when we got to the main event, it was as if we'd got in a time machine and gone back 15 years, while a lot of, I call them younger wrestlers. They're not young at all. They're all in their mid-30s.
No, mid-30s to early 40s.
Yeah.
It's what made me laugh about them. Well, not laugh so much as, I say bitterly laugh about the Mickie James thing, where I'm like, she's not that old. Like, she's
exactly.
2 years older than me. Like, she ain't old, and she's younger than most of the guys. It was such a weird thing. But yeah, like a lot of the guys in there, it's not so much, this is the thing about, that people misunderstand about, this sort of, and again, and this is talking from an entertainment angle rather than a sporting angle, which obviously, I mean, look at the state of me, I don't know nothing about the sporting angle of anything. But from an entertainment angle, it's not about youth. If you're still capable, then the age doesn't matter. If you're still absolutely entertaining. But it's the freshness. It's not so much that the human being is young. The character is young.
Exactly.
It's a young new guy. Bobby Roode and Nakamura are young in that they're fresh to this audience. They are experienced veterans the world over, and they are not young men, but they are young in this environment, in this climate, which is something that companies forget. Like, they build on one or two strong people and try and keep them as long as they can, which leads to staleness. When really you want this sort of refresh rate, have guys up in the top of the card, put them back down to the middle for a bit, let them cool off, pop them back up, just have this sort of rotational effect. And yeah, seeing Triple H unnecessarily win a match that revolved around feuding McMahon's was like I'd never stopped watching.
100%.
I was like, this is what I remember. Now I'm up to speed.
You've missed nothing.
Yeah, it turns out all along I thought I'd missed so much, but in reality, nothing had changed. Triple H had won a match that he didn't need to win because McMahons were angry at each other again.
It's just hilarious. I think my favourite thing about it is that technically, when you look about how that finish went down, Triple H both won it for Raw and lost it for SmackDown. Like, he was responsible for literally everything that happened was because of Triple H's actions. And I was just like... And I like Triple H. Like, I really, really do. Like, I've said it before on countless podcasts. He's the reason I wanted to start lifting weights, because I was a young kid and I thought, oh, he looks so cool and like a superhero. But it gets to a point where you have to be like, what is this going to serve down the line? Like, it's not. Especially if this is building to a Kurt Angle versus Triple H match, which I'd love to see, especially at WrestleMania, somewhere in the middle of the card. That's a great showcase to have. But if you then put all this stock in it here and you get to May next year and Triple H is going to be off TV, I don't think Kurt Angle will have another match for a long time, then you start going, well, why didn't you treat Finn Balor better? And why didn't you treat Samoa Joe better? And Bobby Roode and Nakamura and all these... That's my worry. I think actually when you do start looking down the road, you do start to think, what are you going to do when we're not in peak season? Because you don't really seem to be planning for it.
Yeah, I mean, Nakamura came on the scene. What was it? He had his big major match was Backlash, and to see him now aimless, like relegated to a lumberjack man in a lumberjack match, along with Bobby Roode already.
That's crazy,
after
right?
One, sort of feud with Ziggler. To see them as lumberjacks and extras in a lumberjack match, like it's not right.
Well, no.
It's not right from an entertainment standpoint. This is highly questionable.
Absolutely. I think the other thing that really sort of worried me with the whole lumberjack concept on SmackDown was that they would never... I know Randy Orton wasn't on the show, but I just mean in general, they never would have put Randy Orton up there because they know that it looks bad. So we can't put Randy Orton. He's too big a star. So the fact they don't see that already for people like Nakamura and Roode, I mean, to me, in that lumberjack match, when Roode and Baron Corbin got into it, that was a signifier to me. What, are they feuding now? So Bobby Roode's going to feud over... And instantly, to me, that places him in that, that segment of the card, which may be the right choice, I don't know, but I don't even think we're giving him a chance. And yet already we're segueing into that.
Yeah, and I mean, hopefully he and Corbin can do something. Like, I'm actually pretty big on Corbin.
Yeah, me too.
I know he gets a lot of stick, but he works a crowd well. I know his mic skills get criticised, but he doesn't need to cut big old promos. His simple... grab the mic after a match and just rub it in people's faces that he won does everything that needs to be done.
I agree.
I love the way he comes down to the ring, like just holding the title in front of people's faces and pulling it away. Even without the title, just sort of seeming deeply wounded by the fans' reactions while putting on a veneer of not giving a crap about what they think is a great little character. Not the world's most original one, but he does it really well. So I enjoy him, and I like the little drift he does around the ring, the ring post when he gets out off through the apron and then just slides back in.
Yeah,
it's a nice little thing.
No, he's got something.
For a guy of his size, that's nice to say.
Absolutely. I think he's got something. Like, it gets into that kind of diminishing returns thing, because the one problem I realise he has is I keep saying, oh, he's got potential, but potential's nothing unless it gets realised eventually.
Yeah.
But I still think he's got time, because, I mean, he's lucky in the sense that he's WWE made. So they're always going to have a soft spot for him. And I think it's quite clear that when it does come to people that are made elsewhere, be that Nakamura or Rude, you do run that risk of, well, you have a shorter lifespan to really make an impact. And if you don't make that impact, then they'll be like, we knew it. You know, stick him down a peg or two. But because my thing as well is, especially someone like Nakamura, who I really thought would be, if nothing else, I thought would be treated like a superstar as they try to, get the network in Japan, and we all know the Jinder Mahal stuff with India. I thought surely that's the main reason to get Nakamura, and yet he just seems like he's drifting to me. I don't even know where he's going at the moment.
Yeah, he seems to have nothing to do. He seems to have been in the Survivor Series match just to be there.
Yeah, just to be eliminated.
He had no investment. Like, during the... I don't want to remind people it happened, but during #UnderSiege, he was there. He was part of the SmackDown raid. And first of all, let me just say, it was like the opposite of a siege. It was an invasion. I know you don't want to use #invasion because it will bring up bad memories, especially for you, Shane and Stephanie. But, first of all, it wasn't a siege. Second of all, I paid close attention to Nakamura during that quote-unquote siege, and never have I seen a person physically embody their current career standing, because he was just hanging around in the back, smirking a bit, not getting involved in anything, being there because it felt like he had to be there.
Absolutely. But
nobody knew why or how to get him there, and that seemed to be his entire deal at Survivor Series, was he was there because WWE knows well enough that they should have him. They just don't know why. I almost worry the company doesn't know why they should have him. They just know they should have him.
I think that is the best description of the way they've used him today. It's almost like someone said, look, Vince, this guy's really good. And he's like, but I don't get it. Just trust me, get him. And now that he's got him, it's like, I know what to do with him. You just told me to get him, and here he is.
Yeah, his music gets a pop all the time. And it seems like maybe that's all they want to do, just bring him out for the music. Yeah. I worry about that with Bobby Roode as well.
So much.
These guys great entrances, and I love seeing them. We said on the last podcast I was on, I'm a sucker for a grand entrance.
Yeah, me too.
Every time Naomi's about to come out, I get excited because that is just such a ridiculously cool entrance. But I worry that they're giving people big entrances at the moment just so that they've got the pop effect and they're not worried about anything else.
Yeah, I think the problem with Bobby Roode is as well, and I do love his entrance and I love his gimmick, but it feels so... We came up with the title of the TV show first, and then we're going to work backwards with it. It just feels...
Well, I mean, the music wasn't even supposed to be his.
Well, yeah.
And
that's what it comes across as. It doesn't... A lot of people disagree with me on this, and I get that, but to me, it doesn't feel like he embodies the glorious gimmick. It just feels like he was given it, and now he's doing well with it, but there's just something missing there for me, and I don't think that's going to serve him going forward, especially because, like you've said, due to the entrance and how much people like it, he's come in as a babyface. And to me, Bobby Roode has always been much better as a heel. He just comes across like a bit of an asshole. He's just got that in a good way. In a good way,
he still does, as a face, and it just doesn't. The Rock could get away with that, because he was just so he had too much charisma. He had too much charisma to handle, so he pulled off this acting like a complete arsehead while remaining a lovable face. Bobby Roode, I don't think, has the charisma for that.
I agree.
He is great as a heel. Does really well as a heel, and he's got the body language that to really sum it up. His whole, leading up for a big glorious chant, all that works. Love seeing his name in lights. When he talks at the moment, he sounds awkward and stunted and not too clear. And again, I don't blame him entirely for that, because I wouldn't be too clear either if I were Bobby Roode or Nakamura right now.
I know. I'm just directionless. That's the only thing that bothered me about the main event of Survivor Series, is that I always, in my world, and I know pay-per-views aren't what they once were with the network, but in my world, you use that to, especially this season, like Survivor Series has always kind of been treated as a push off to what's going to happen at Rumble and Mania. And for all those guys to come away with nothing really, like, Balor, Joe, Rude, Nakamura, I'm sure there's someone else I'm forgetting, but to come out of it with nothing seems really silly for me. I mean, credit where...
I think the only guy who really got anything out of it was Strowman. I think he was the only one.
Literally what I was about to say, yeah. I mean, kudos to WWE for doing it with him. But you're right, that was it, right?
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. And I will say, because I'm in the same boat as you, I'm like, I do have a real soft spot for Triple H. It's just, it gets to a point where I'm like, steady on, mate. like just scale it. You of all people can afford to scale back how great you are in the public eye. You're minted. You're done. You're where you need to be.
Yeah.
You're solid. You don't need a push. But I will say that for as much as he put himself over that night, the look of strangled fear in his eyes when I almost called him Broman when Strowman had him in the corner. It does. When Strowman had him choked up in the corner, I've never seen someone sell fear that well. And it might just be because you rarely see it off someone like Triple H. But again, that's part of the reason why Strowman benefited so much, was it's like, oh my God, he's making the game cower like a child in the corner. And just, I'll never forget that look that was etched on Triple H's face, like red-faced, wide-eyed, almost tears in his eyes.
Yeah.
Like, I am terrified of this man.
And that's awesome.
And that was about the only real thing they got. I mean, I wouldn't say it's the only thing they got right in that match. Like, seeing Nakamura and Bobby Roode get excited and getting a piece of Triple H in the ring, there was a special moment to that. And that worked well. It was really up until Nakamura got eliminated, and then people were like, oh, now we see where this is going. Up until then, it was a really fun match. And I think overall, Survivor Series as a show was a fun show. Obviously, as with, I've learned this now after a year, any weekend that has a WWE pay-per-view following an NXT one will suffer. This much I've learned already. But for what it was good. That's also reminded me, I just need to say, it was already my most anticipated match of WarGames, just because I am in complete love with the two men involved.
I know you're going to say
it. But Aleister Black, yes. Velveteen Dream, 1000% exceeded my expectations.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the build had already been great. The way they play off each other with the showmanship it's just been beautiful. But the way they went in that match, from the reveal of the tights with "Say My Name" across the crotch and good. The faces on it, to them doing each other's body language, like poses and things, to obviously the wrestling itself was stellar, and the story it told and the way it ended with both guys winning, basically. Yeah. Regardless of who got the pinfall, I think even on commentary they said like both men won this, and to see Houston cheering for a character like Velveteen Dream, chanting "Say his name," and Velveteen, was special.
It really
was.
I
think that is honestly. This is going to sound hyperbolic, especially because we're talking about WWE products where everything is etched in history and will go down forever, despite the fact it never does. I will say that is probably one of the most entertaining and fun matches I've ever seen out of that company.
No, I agree.
Like WWE, NXT combined, all of it. That is one of the favourite matches I've ever seen. I am so in love. I will go back and watch that one many times. And I was already in love with Velveteen. I already really liked Alistair. After this, I'm so on board with both of them, and I'm 100% on board the Velveteen Dream Train. Everything about him, I love.
I think it ties into what we were saying at the start as well, right? He embraced it. I mean, that gimmick on paper is like, what? What are you talking about? But the way he comes out, he believes it. And I think that is a lost art in pro wrestling. He believes in that character, he believes in that gimmick, and he doesn't hold back with it. He embraces it fully, and because of that, I can embrace it too. I can just accept, okay, this is the person you are, and I'll go along for the ride. And I think
I'm sure I'm not the only person to have compared him to Goldust, but it's that similar sort of. There are major differences between them, where obviously Velveteen's gone for this Prince style gimmick, along with the, this overly sexualized, ambiguous persona. But it's that same sort of just complete commitment to it and selling it so well that even as an ostensible heel, you hear women in the crowd screaming for him. Simply, and I don't even think, not to say he's not attractive, because, I mean, obviously there's a reason they gave him the gimmick they gave him with all of the writhing and the hip swaying and sashaying. But I feel like the women are screaming because they're buying into the idea that that's part of the Velveteen gimmick is, of course, some people in the crowd should be groupies and be screaming like teenagers for him. And people just seem so into it. And even the people who seem to boo him, I get this sense that they're enjoying it. And
I totally
and that's
agree.
What you want to see in a bad guy, especially these days where it's so hard to be one.
Exactly, and I think that's why I just get such a kick out of it. Because, and also, NXT does this perfectly, nearly, especially when they're building up to their takeover shows. But the stories they tell are just so simple. And you can get into them really with one promo package. And sometimes on the main roster, that's not true because they go here, there, and everywhere. But really, you could have told, if you had sat down to watch this with someone that hadn't watched any of it, you could really just say, well, look, that Alistair guy, he doesn't really like this Velveteen guy, and all this Velveteen guy wants is a bit of respect. And that's being summarized in that he wants him to say his name. That's it. That's the whole story. And you're straight away, as opposed to, some of the absolute roller coasters they go on in the main roster. And I think that's where I get amazed that it doesn't sort of carry over, because that's all you got to do. Even if it is because we've been telling complicated stories for too long, we can go back. Again, it all ties in, but we can go back to these characters that are over the top and audacious, and we can go back to times when storylines are just, this dude hates this dude because of X, now they're going to have a fight. And NXT does that so well all the time, and it makes it so much easier to watch.
You look at the Authors of Pain come out, you know what they're about.
Yeah.
You can just see them and know what they're about. Same with Sanity. They come out, you know what they're about. Aleister Black, like, it's there etched all over him. And it's just not true of a lot of people who just get diluted when they get lost up in that roster of weird, complex storylines that don't need to be so complex, and people who are just guys milling about.
So many of them.
And lost.
So many of them at the moment. So many. I mean, not well.
But, I mean, even the most complicated story of WarGames was at heart quite simple. It got complicated with, Undisputed Era, which I've got a problem with that name because a group of people calling themselves a period of time is just setting me off. As much as I'm enjoying them as a faction, then please just call yourself Undisputed or Undisputed anything that isn't some time. But there was complexity there with, they cost these people this, Sanity don't like AOP because of this, and Roderick Strong was going to join Undisputed Era but didn't. But even then, it basically boiled down to three groups hated each other so much and were doing too much of the fighting that Regal was like, stop it, go in a cage and fight. And it was still, that one had twists and turns, but still at its heart had a very simple foundation of, these guys came in, started taken liberties, all hell broke loose, put him in a cage.
Exactly, and a lot of people, I didn't really understand this. They thought that the WarGames was too crazy. I was like, what did you think it was going to be? Like, you can't have all that hardware and not make it a little bit over the top. You'd be doing a disservice to the whole thing. And
I mean, a match as stuffed with rules, uncharacteristic for the product.
Oh yeah,
as WarGames, and they did fantastic with it, I thought, considering it's always felt like a very cumbersome, overly complex idea to me. And they worked with it and made something that I was pretty hooked on.
Yeah, me too. I thought that whole show was great. I didn't think it had a bad moment, and it benefits in the sense that they're short, and that's always gonna help. But still, they rarely fumble NXT, and that's why, it's just great. It's just a really good product. It's just nothing I'd say. What I did want to touch upon with you before I forget, transitioning back into the main roster, is that obviously since we last chatted, our friend Roman Reigns has reunited with his boys, The Shield, and a lot has happened. Now, he had somewhat of a throwaway match on Survivor Series, had a good match with the New Day, but it opened the show, and then that was done. But then, of course, 24 hours later, he relieved The Miz of the Intercontinental Championship, and he sent the internet into a fury as they saw Roman Reigns getting yet more preferential treatment. I said it last time. I've said it a lot. I'll say it again. I don't mind Roman Reigns. I don't necessarily think he's the face of the company, but I think he's a very good wrestler who I enjoy. I mean, where are you at with all of this? IC champ could help the belt as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, yeah, I don't have a problem with this. The Miz has had the title for a long time. There's no doubt he's going to get it another time. He will have that belt again. And, fingers crossed, he's got a universal run in him. I mean, while Brock Lesnar has been not around, he is the top heel on Raw. There's no question about it. Most shows, in the way that a lot of SmackDowns have been built around Owens and Zayn, a lot of Raws get built entirely around The Miz. He's one of the few guys who'll have like running storylines throughout shows now, which again is a little bit throwback. These days everything's sort of very often self-contained segments, but The Miz will have a running storyline with his Miztourage, and they will be often funny, and like his bug-eyed performances are fantastic. I'm not saying anything new about The Miz. Like, you can easily trip over on the internet and find some praise for The Miz, and especially his recent run. But he doesn't necessarily need the Intercontinental title right now. He is still the top heel right now. There's no taking that away from him. And a desperate Miz trying to get it back will make for, I think, a very good program. And whatever he does beyond there, Raw's really got no choice but to keep him at the top. I mean, what are they going to do? Like, give Bray Wyatt a win? They seem so against that.
He's vanished.
They're not going to do that.
He's vanished from TV the last 2 weeks. He beat up Jason Jordan, and then that's it. He hasn't been. Bray Wyatt is a ghost.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Obviously, they've decided that Sister Abigail, that bringing out, let's face it, one of the characters you'd find in the Atmosphere board game, they decided against that. They thought that was a little bit silly.
That is brilliant.
I mean, like I said, I'm all for silliness, but that was
too much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think Sister Abigail as an alter ego would have been too much, but like, don't make him look like the character I do as a joke on one of my YouTube shows with ghastly white face paint and clownish red lipstick. And then they try and hide how bad that looks with a veil. Like, I think if you'd have put like an eyes wide shut feminine looking mask or something on his face and had him and some sort of like robes that aren't necessarily like a dress or anything, but could be, something a bit more unisex, but flowy. Honestly, I think there is something that can be done with Sister Abigail. What was done was not to be done, but I'm so not against the idea that he could have made a Sister Abigail alter ego work against the Demon. It's just it wasn't going to be that way. That wasn't the way to do it.
Just the voice changing stuff as well is too much for me. Yeah. It's just too silly.
I noticed when they played a repeat of one of the segments, they changed the voice.
Oh, did they really? I missed that.
Yeah, they actually took the dual voice off on a replay at one point, and it was just Bray speaking in a bit of a higher pitched voice.
Oh man.
Which was creepier. It wasn't as comical, but it was still a bit too stupid. Honestly, at this point, Bray needs to just... And I thought this is where it was going when they kept... Before he brought the Sister Abigail is Alive stuff, they kept cutting to him in a rocking chair, losing his mind about being lied to. And honestly, I thought it was time for the unraveling of the Eater of Worlds persona and this idea that Bray Wyatt, the man, realizes he's not a god and is desperately trying to convince himself and everyone else that he is.
That's a good story.
And that... Yeah, like, that's where I thought they were going. Like, that's where it needs to go, because no one buys him as an otherworldly entity. No one buys him as an Eater of Worlds. Lean into that. Like, have it that even Bray now, after this string of losses, after a humiliating year, isn't powerful, isn't untouchable, isn't, the devil, and has to either come to terms with that or spiral into complete delusion and have that be the focal point. And Finn Balor came close to pointing that out at some points during their feud, but never went all the way with it. Eventually snapped back to try to sell us on this idea that, when Bray showed me Sister Abigail, I was scared. What? I expected him to tell me to pick up a card and read it out. They really should have just gone back to this idea that even maybe with the Sister Abigail thing, like, he's just so desperate now to keep some mystique that he's putting clown's makeup on. Like, they honestly would get more mileage out of Bray Wyatt if they made him pathetic on purpose instead of pathetic by accident.
That you just hit the nail on the head. That's the problem, is they try and book him like he's this terrifying, scary dude, and he's not. He's not. I feel like I could beat Bray Wyatt if I turned up in WWE tomorrow, because they just never, it's boy who cried wolf, right? Eventually, people just don't believe you anymore. And that, again, it ties into everything we've been saying, where I've got to be able to believe. If I was in charge, I would reset Bray Wyatt entirely. I know a lot of people like his entrance. I'd change his music. I'd change everything, because I just think right now it's gone too far down the wrong path. To the fact that he was not on Raw this week, as far as I know, and I haven't heard anyone even mention it. No one even said, where's Bray Wyatt? He wasn't even a thought in people's minds, which I think...
Like, I know when we last spoke, I was really high on Bray. The intervening months have gotten me to see exactly what everyone else was saying about him.
Yeah.
So now I'm completely there with everyone. A reset at this point, or as I say, like, make the fact that he is looking pathetic on accident a benefit.
Yeah.
And have him unravel and have him cling to an idea that we all know is not true, but he is still trying to convince himself is. That, I think, like, even if they keep the music and the entrance, just have it a bit more unhinged. Like, have him, like, desperately trying to convince people that this whole Firefly thing means something. Like, command the audience to sing along with him. Like try and get the crowd to back up his insecurities and his delusions. That's where that's the best place to take him now that they've brought him where he is.
I totally agree. That sounds straight away. That sounds interesting and fascinating as well. Because I think he's a good enough... Actor's a bad term, but we'll go with it. He's a good enough actor to pull it off, because he's very good, at verbiage and delivery and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So
I love hearing him talk, even now when I know it's complete bollocks and will lead to a loss. He's still got an engaging charisma that keeps people... Like, it keeps the crowd quiet when they'd normally want to go, what, during some of the rambling gibberish that comes out of his mouth. people still are kind of a bit enraptured to him. He pulls off the charismatic preacher thing really well.
Absolutely. And it's just, I think that's why it's a real shame. I think anybody else probably would have been getting more of a free pass. But because you see his talent and because you know he's so good, it becomes frustrating. Because you're like, this...
Yeah, it's tragic.
Yeah, because this character should have been the next coming of The Undertaker, or, however you want to describe it. But instead... it's more, I can't even think of a comparison, but, it's fallen flat already. And he's been around a while, 4 years or so, but, it's been the last 12 to 18 months when people have been banging this drum. So, the longer you keep banging it, the further somebody falls into the ground. And eventually, you do really have to take a look at it and go, well, we've killed this. So, so what do we do? And trying to take...
And like you said, like, no one cared where he was.
No.
Like, I was curious, but not enough to voice it. Like and as I say, I desperately want him to, because when I was watching in ye olde days, I gravitated towards characters like Kane.
I love Kane,
the supernatural, the masked, the mysterious, creepy, the villainous, of course. Kane, Mankind, that sort of stuff. That's my bag, and. It reminds me of the guy I keep putting over in the local indies out here, Zombie Dragon, who basically looks like a Daedra from the Elder Scrolls. I love all that. I love the like anything creepy, over the top, masks and hoods and all of that. It's just, damn, do something with it.
Yeah, because he's got it. But you mentioned it about you've got to have the support of the booking committee. And I'm sure they think what they're doing is really good, but it's not. It's not. You mentioned the indie scene, which I want to get to in one sec. I just want your opinions on Brock Lesnar versus AJ Styles from Survivor Series. Because to me, that was not only the best match of the show, it's one of my favourite matches of the year. I just like seeing a big dude beat up a small dude who then manages to sort of get his opening against the big dude, then fight back. It's my favourite match. Or just two big dudes absolutely maul each other. What did you think about it all, though? I mean, were you as high on it as everybody else?
It was a classic match, and I mean that in multiple senses of the word. It was a classic. It was a classic keep both guys strong affair.
Yeah.
It was a classic underdog match.
Yep.
It was a classic big guy comes in, beats the tar out of this guy. There's a hope spot as the other one just does some fantastic clawing back, takes them to the limit, and ends up gaining respect. Told a very, again, as we were talking about with NXT, what made it work. I think what made it work was the fact that it was a last-minute change. And they only had a week or two to sell it. They had like 2 shows. They had 2 promos to sell this. They had Paul Heyman selling it on Raw. They had Daniel Bryan selling it on SmackDown. And it was all it needed. And as a result, without the complexity, with it just being... I mean, part of what makes Brock Lesnar work, and I've said... I said the last time we talked, I'm not really into Brock Lesnar. I don't really see it. But I will give him credit that any match with him is already a built-in story because everyone wants to beat Brock Lesnar. So he never needs an interesting story. He never needs a swerve, betrayal. He never needs a gimmick. He just has to show up and be Brock Lesnar.
Yes, true.
And that does deserve respect to have gotten yourself into that position where... the story is your Brock Lesnar. Like that's all it ever is. It's be it Braun Strowman, Samoa Joe. It's all about I just want to beat Brock Lesnar. And it's part of what keeps Asuka strong as well. Is she doesn't need massive storylines. It's I want to beat Asuka for God's sake. So from that affair, like it was one of the most anticipated matches on the card for me, despite me never, ever caring about a Brock Lesnar match, because it didn't need anything. It just needed AJ Styles to do what AJ Styles does.
He's amazing.
And he's another one who, at first, I wasn't all that into him because he seemed, again, to me like one of these, just a guy. Just he not in terms of his ability, but in terms of
his persona. Absolutely, you're totally right with that, yeah.
But even then, after, like, again, it's he's only had the title a very short time. But in that time, he's been selling me on who he is as a guy as well as a performer, because he just has some energy to him now. I felt like, certainly not to the degree of Nakamura or Rude, but for a while he was sort of in a little bit of a holding pattern. But now he has a momentum and a direction. Like, I see it now. Now I see a full package there that I'm all into. So yeah, really into it, and that match was just, it was magnetic. I've never been so tuned into a match with Lesnar in it. And huge credit, of course, to that goes to AJ Styles.
I think he's the best. I think he's my favourite wrestler in the world. In terms of in-ring ability, I think I put him as number one. I enjoy all of his matches.
I mean, it's hard to counter at all. Hard to counter that.
He had a good match with Jinder Mahal. That's what I always go back to. And I like Jinder Mahal. I got nothing against him, but he's not a very... I don't like to say he's not a good pro wrestler, because pro wrestling's really hard, and he hasn't made it there by fluke. But he's not as good as AJ Styles. That's a better way to put it. He's not...
Well, that's putting it quite light.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, AJ gave him the best match of his run. Jinder. He gave Jinder the best match of his run, and gave Brock Lesnar a fantastic match. And kudos to Lesnar. I mean, he sold...
Oh, man, wonderfully.
Limping out of that. He sold the idea that he took AJ lightly and paid for it, even though he came out the winner. He paid a physical price for underestimating AJ Styles, which it's exactly the sort of story you want to tell with a guy with AJ Styles' build in WWE.
Totally agree.
In a world where size is seen to dominate so much, you want to tell the story of, like Heyman said, speed kills. You want to tell the story of, don't overlook AJ Styles, because he will find a way to leave you in pain.
That calf crusher spot as well, when Lesnar was selling like, well, no pun intended, selling like a beast, and then he just smashed AJ Styles' face into the floor.
Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful.
That was like you'd see in a comic book superhero movie style thing, like this huge guy just yelling in pain because the little guy got him in his weakness, and then just to grab his face. Like I've seen people get out the calf crusher with a smash of AJ's head, but the multiple smash was done so well. It was done really well. It was a very well-storied match, and I think it only benefited from having such little build.
I hadn't thought of that. I think you're spot on. It made it more exciting. It was like a shot of adrenaline from nowhere. You're like, oh my gosh, we're going to get this. And then it was here. So that you were still riding that wave.
Yeah. It was this showcase of, these guys don't have personal beef. They just want to fight and show their best.
Yeah, they just want to win.
And it made both guys come out strong. And obviously Lesnar doesn't need to come out strong, but obviously he's got that Universal title languishing around his waist and not really doing much. So and it's clear that the WWE wants to kind of make that a big deal. So everyone kind of came out of that looking really good, and the match itself told the perfect kind of simple story that was needed.
I agree. I totally agree. It's they're definitely my favourite match. Now, we teased we're going to talk about the indie scene, which we'll do now. I mean, do you want to start with the cool stuff that you've got coming up, or do you want to keep that on the down low for now? That could just be a tease that I throw out there and never actually capitalise on.
I mean, there's been some public talking about it. I don't want to give too much away. I know some people are already like, oh, Jim, with his back, like, he's just not seriously going to step into a ring and take bumps.
That is a point.
I'm not a professional wrestler, and I'm not going to be. But on my weekly show that I do about video games, it started as a joke to make fun of WWE's overzealous use of its copyright on YouTube. And
oh man, they're awful, aren't they? Good grief.
Yeah. They dinged me really bad because I used a couple of seconds of Stone Cold's ridiculous CGI head from, I think it was like Unforgiven 2002.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I remember seeing that one, yeah.
Just this hilarious triple-headed,
Yeah.
like a big Stone Cold head with two little heads coming out the top. It was hilarious. And I just used it for a bit of B-roll for a laugh. And rather than just demonetize or try and slap ads on the show, WWE are able to use Content ID to just take a video down entirely.
It's just crazy.
So now ordinarily a YouTuber would just, make an angry YouTube video about how WWE sucks. But I pride myself on being the greatest showman in games media. So I paid to have my own theme tune written, paid to have my own, and they needed a lot of spandex. This was a costly affair. I got my own spandex bodysuit made and made a character that was 100% legally distinct from anything WWE has ever done.
And also wonderful. Let's draw also a wonderful creation.
I guarantee you that Stardust is in no way affiliated with World Wrestling Entertainment. It's 100% the legal property of the Jimquisition and Jim Sterling Entertainment. And he looks fantastic in a bodysuit. And I had this idea for doing a little bit of a crossover thing with Pro Wrestling Ego, which is an indie promotion down here in Mississippi. I thought, we'll do a little bit of a fun crossover thing, get some of their wrestlers on the Jimquisition, do something funny and crossovery. And it kind of spiraled a little bit out of... not out of control, it's just that...
It built wonderfully.
Pro Wrestling Ego had a better idea than I had. And... they have publicly challenged Stardust to appear at one of their upcoming shows.
They certainly have.
They got a show in Byram on the 2nd, which I will be attending in the audience. And I don't know if Stardust will be there. But Stardust has definitely, as his representative, my client Stardust has accepted Pro Wrestling Ego's challenge. And we'll show them what a winner looks like at the end of the day. That's what he's there to do. But that's in his words. In the words of Jim Sterling, who went to see their Great Southern 8 tournament this past month, I was blown away. I've seen independent wrestling here and there before, mostly YouTube and the like. This was my first taste of it up close, and my first taste of the local guys down here. They had representatives from all the southern states. It's a yearly tournament they do. Some fantastic talent came out. Ray Fury is sort of the big guy down here. He's Pro Wrestling Ego's main guy. Ray Fury is, his frog splash elbow is a sight to behold.
That even sounds good.
Yeah, he does a fantastic, beautiful frog splash elbow. If you look at the Jimquisition that went up, it's called, I think, Bugger Me, the Nintendo Switch is killing it. If you look at that episode, there's a montage of clips at the end that show off some of these guys. You get to see some of Ray Fury, O'Shea Edwards, who represented Georgia. O'Shea Edwards is wonderful. Huge amount of energy when you see him in the ring. Big guy, big but limber. His match with Ray Fury was beautiful. Beautiful stuff. Eric Wayne, who came up with one of the most inventive... I'm actually looking at his GIF, which I think he took from our montage, actually, because not many people caught good footage of it. And we didn't catch great footage of it, because a little boy's head's mostly in the way. But Eric Wayne pulled off a beautiful heel move in that he took his own newborn son, his 1-year-old boy, I think he's like a couple of months, year old, and used him as a weapon.
That's incredible.
Held him up like the friggin' Lion King, swung him, and I think it may have been O'Shea. It may have been an O'Shea match. And he sold the living heck out of being lightly brushed in the face by a baby's feet. Was crawling to the floor, at which point Eric Wayne comes up behind him, lifts the baby high up, and does a double stomp to his head. The baby double stomp, which again, he just sells like there's no tomorrow.
It's just brilliant.
And it was fantastic. I also want to give a shout out to a wrestler who, he wrestled in sort of the opener, sort of for people who paid and got in early. So, you know, full lights were up. It wasn't a massive deal. So I think he's very new. I don't know too much about him. But from what I've seen of his gimmick, like if I were to ever do sort of any full-time managing stuff like we talked about last time, I think that guy's got the gimmick that I would just love to expand upon. I mean, first off, he comes down to the ring checking his Twitter.
I love that straight. This is why I love indie stuff. It's so inventive. It's just great.
He comes down, just strolls down, checking his phone like he's not too bothered. The moment he sees the camera, he starts playing just to the camera. Just to the camera, not really bothered about the crowd. Good in-ring performer, you know, really entertained, did a great match. But the name is what really sells it. His name is Lights, Camera, and Action.
I love pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is my favourite thing in the world.
I am very much, like I've said, it's the same thing as Velveteen Dream. It's like you show me something unwarrantedly for the character ridiculous. The small name, big ego kind of character. And you call him Lights, Camera, and Action, and I'm all about it. So I'm really excited to see more of him. And I also want to talk just briefly about the Path of Nightmares, who are just everything I love about wrestling in a group, all coming out, masks, obviously.
Always.
One of them, like almost like a leather face mask. Not quite leather face, but you sort of... I mean, he's coming out wearing... The only other thing he's wearing are denim dungarees. So he's got this full, like, deliverance look to him. And there's Zombie Dragon, who, first of all, again, love the name.
Best name.
Comes out with a burning book, you know, open book, fire in the pages... does all the tricks, you know, throws fireballs, does the green mist, has I'm not quite sure of the person's name. It wasn't said at the Great Southern 8, but one of the minions, there's like lots of them. One of the minions is, maybe they're called Prank, I think. But they're like a black and red court jester meets Cobra Commander in their dress.
Oh, okay.
But very slender and crawls about. And their main thing is getting in onto the ring. And then on each side, coming out onto the apron just to scream at the audience. So, yeah, Path of Nightmare's another group I'm very up on. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. So Pro Wrestling Ego is something that has caught my attention down here, and I'm looking forward to, I guess, working alongside them.
I can't wait.
Be the best way to put it.
I can't wait. And I think the other great thing is that you mentioned some pleasant people on the internet that were going, "Oh, you just watch WWE, rah rah," as if that's some kind of problem. As if like, how dare you just enjoy one form of entertainment, Jim? But I think the best thing about it is that, you know, as we all do when we get back into wrestling, eventually by one way, you know, be it by talking to a company, by stumbling across them, we all find indie wrestling eventually. And usually,
yeah.
And usually it's awesome because they're not, there's no red tape, there's no barriers, there's no obstacles. It's really, look, you just go do whatever, and if you can get yourself over, that's great. And I think that is kind of what adds to the whole fun. You buy into it's like everything, right? When you start watching movies, you go to the big AAAs and then eventually probably find independent films and realise that they have their own positives as well. So I think it's great.
Yeah. When you get into something, it kind of, you know, it gets infectious. And I'm not fully following it yet. I need to find the time to.
Well, that's the other thing, yeah.
To the rest, but you know, I've been slowly turning my eye towards your Ring of Honor and all of that stuff. Predominantly because, you know, I know Cody Rhodes is there and I just adore him.
Yeah.
I love. I mean, I now dress up in spandex and call myself Stardust. I clearly adore Cody Rhodes. Not that Stardust is in any way related to anything anyone has ever done.
Completely
ever.
unique.
absolutely original, my property. OC, do not steal. So don't go chomping on my flavour. But you know, I like him, and I want to sort of follow that more and more. And yeah, I'm just getting so much more like it was back before I got disillusioned and drifted away. The infections come back. And I guess it doesn't go away because, again, we discussed last time, not to keep referencing last time we spoke, but we talked about how my show, The Jimquisition, has always been influenced in some way by wrestling.
Yeah, both of us, yeah.
The reason it has the theme music it has, the reason I wear a costume instead of just talk completely over game footage like a lot of YouTubers, the whole reason I have a shtick, I have a gimmick, is because I was a huge wrestling fan as a younger guy. And now that I've come back to it, and as I say, the infection spreads, and I have been getting to know the indie scene more and more, it reminds me just how much the Jimquisition itself and that persona, and the fact of the idea of a YouTuber game critic with a gimmick, you know, owes to that. You know, I'm reminded of how much I owe to that, rather.
You and me both, man. I think we both managed to use wrestling to find the success. So
I think the Miller Report is an even bigger example. I think.
I ripped it off.
You went as far as having wrestling matches in the middle of Miller Reports, if I remember correctly, complete with commentators.
I just ripped it off. We all, it was a team effort. We all just ripped it off. We all ripped off WWE. Well, I'm genuinely excited to see what you do with Pro Wrestling Eagle. Like, genuinely, like, you know, I genuinely can't wait. I cannot wait. I think it's awesome. I would also like to point out that you should definitely go and check out Jim's YouTube channel, Jim Sterling, on YouTube, and you should also watch. I can never pronounce it properly, but I can't. How do you say it? I can never say it right.
Commentocracy.
There we go. Commentocracy, which is one of my favorite characters I've seen in years. The first time I saw, I died. I think I died. I laughed so much. So you should definitely all go and check that out, because that really is a work of art. I mean, everything you do is, but that really tickled me something fierce. So
thank you. Yeah, we had a lot of fun doing that. The season 1 wraps up of Commentocracy. Season 2 will probably be not so much a season as just a perpetual thing that's done a lot less frequently. We're retooling the costume. I'm adding to the costume.
That excites me. That excites me.
A little bit closer to Hugh Laurie from Blackadder the Third in terms of getting a nice waistcoat and everything. A few more frills. He'll look a bit more authentic. But will still be a ghastly 18th century aristocrat reading out internet comments for people's enjoyment.
So good, so good. But genuinely, if you don't know Jim's work, and you should definitely go find him. He's on Twitter at Jim Sterling. Search for Jim Sterling on YouTube. And obviously, if you're in the Mississippi area, go check out Pro Wrestling Ego, right?
Yes, Pro Wrestling Ego, which is also their Twitter handle if you want to check them out. And hashtag Pro Wrestling Ego as well. And hashtag kill the business, just for a little shout out to Zombie Dragon.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
There we go.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me as always, Jim. Like I said,
thank you for inviting me again. Complete pleasure as always.
I tell you, man, I said it last time, I say it again. I genuinely enjoy chatting wrestling with you. It's just awesome. You have such a good take. I mean, people can throw silly nonsense at you, but I would say you've got a much better take than most people I talk to about pro wrestling. And it genuinely...
Well, it's like I used to say, because... You know, when I was a younger man, I used to argue on internet forums, and I was part of, you know, the IWC, arguing all the time with other IWC members. And I said even back then, and I still say it now, like 15 going on 20, I think, probably closer to 20 than 15 years on. You know, I don't know a lot about sports. I don't know. I'm not a pro wrestling historian. I can't tell you about how to put on a good match, but I know entertainment.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's sort of the take I can bring. I would never tell a wrestler how to do their job. I would never dare to presume. But I like to think I know enough about entertainment to add to that element of the discussion. You know?
Well,
and then that's where I try and come at it from as an entertainer who knows entertainment and is always very focused on that side of the business. You know, I love the matches. Of course I do. I wouldn't watch it if I was just there for entrances. I'd just watch a supercut of entrances. But that's not my expertise. You know, I can tell when a match is bad and when it is good, but I won't be able to tell you much more than that. I just love entertainers, and pro wrestlers are incredible entertainers who do more for a crowd than many people in any entertainment industry would do.
Indeed.
In terms of what they put on the line.
Yeah, well, exactly. Put their bodies and they put a lot of other stuff on the line as well. Well, I genuinely think you got a great take on the whole pro wrestling stuff. Hopefully we can catch up after Royal Rumble, and then we can have our big episode.
I would love that. Royal Rumble is my favourite of the pay-per-views.
Mine
growing
too.
Up, that was always my favourite.
It's just the best.
I'm a big Rumble fan.
And then will have to catch up after WrestleMania, and we can all just cry after watching 7.5 hours of wrestling just to see Roman Reigns. It is too much. Just to see Roman Reigns win again. But we will see what happens. Honestly, man, thank you so much for joining me. We'll definitely have you on again whenever you're free, to be honest, because it's just excellent. If you are listening on iTunes right now, please give us a little 5-star rating. Give us a review. It puts us up the rankings, and that is what it's all about. It's getting the Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast out there. And all of this, of course, is fueled by patreon.com/SimonMiller316. Even if you give $1, you make my heart smile. More importantly, make sure you look out for potentially Stardust at Pro Wrestling Ego. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? But more importantly, Jim, thanks very much for joining me, and we'll catch up soon.